Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're talking about why you might have a low milk supply and what you can do about it. So there are three different sort of categories, if you will, of things that can cause a low milk supply. The first is one of the most common. So these are to do with how your breastfeeding has been managed and how your baby's feeding. So these might include things like ineffective milk removal. So if your baby's not latching and feeding well and actually emptying your breasts when they feed, or they're only feeding on one side at each feed, so the other breast is remaining full for a long period of time. If your baby has a tongue tie and that's impacting on how effectively they can feed. If you have introduced formula really early on, or you're substituting feeds with bottles and you're not pumping to compensate, that can contribute to a low milk supply. The other things you might see are if you're not feeding your baby frequently enough, or if you've started to implement a timed feeding or sleep routine, especially in the first couple of months of breastfeeding, this can start to have a knock-on effect on your milk supply as well. You might also see hormonal causes. So this can commonly be things like retained placenta. So if when your baby's being born, the placenta has not come out complete, so there's part of that placenta still left in your uterus. What this does is it increases your progesterone levels because your placenta produces progesterone. When our body makes those changes in the first few days after birth, to go from colostrum to that mature milk, what it responds to is a really sudden drop in progesterone. So if we've got retained placenta and we've still got those high progesterone levels, that can stop that process of your milk coming in. So if you've got things like ovarian cysts, which commonly cause quite high testosterone levels, that will also have an impact on your milk supply as well. And you can see other endocrine causes too. So things like if you've got other hormonal imbalances, if you've got undiagnosed thyroid issues, these can all contribute as well. And then the last area where we might see that a low milk supply is an issue is in terms of actually how your breasts have developed. So there's a condition called insufficient glandular tissue, or IGT. And this is where during puberty, their breasts haven't developed properly as they've gone through puberty. So that milk making tissue hasn't developed fully, and therefore the potential of how much milk they can make is decreased. Now, how you go about fixing the problem depends on what the cause is. So it's really important, if you think that you do have a low milk supply, that you first seek out some support in identifying that cause. And the best place to go is to see a lactation consultant, or IBCLC. Ultimately, the best way we can increase milk production is by increasing milk removal and increasing the frequency. So when we want to think about really good milk production, we want frequent and effective milk removal. That is the real key. So if we can increase the frequency that we're feeding or pumping or removing milk, and we can increase the effectiveness in terms of how much we're removing, this is really important for helping to boost your supply. So think about firstly improving your baby's latch. Make sure that your baby has been assessed for tongue function issues or tongue tie. Make sure that they're taking a deep latch and that latch is feeling comfortable for you. And I'll link my video just up here, which you can take a look at, which takes you through a great technique for deepening their latch and improving how effectively they feed. We also want to think about removing milk more frequently. So this might be offering your baby the breast more frequently, making sure you're offering both sides at every feed instead of just one, and also potentially incorporating some expressing or pumping into the regime as well, so that once your baby's fed, we're then also expressing or pumping to remove any milk that's remaining there. Your body will very much control your milk supply by supply and demand. So the more that we remove, the more it will produce. The more that's left behind in your breast at the end of every feed, that signals your brain to tell it that it's not being used and that we don't need it, and it can cut back on production. So we want to make sure that your breasts, after every single feed, both breasts feel light and soft and deflated, and we've removed as much milk as possible. The next step in the process might involve getting some blood tests to see if there's anything going on hormonally or health-wise with you that is contributing to that low milk supply. So it's a good idea, like I said, to work with an IBCLC on this, because they can recommend which specific blood tests are going to be relevant for you. But looking at things like your prolactin levels, looking at your progesterone and testosterone levels, and also looking at things like thyroid function are really important in figuring out whether there's any other underlying issues which are contributing to those challenges with your milk supply. For more tips on how to increase milk production, I will link another video here that you can take a look at. And be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any other videos with fantastic tips about breastfeeding.